I had the opportunity of meeting Eric in 2010 and went on a tour actually at that time with a group called People to People, and it was rural Canadian physicians that got together and went to tour Rwanda and meet other doctors there too. So before I ask Eric to come up, I just want to remind you of his webpage, treasuresofrwanda.com. As well, you can speak to him about his tour company. I totally recommend it because I've experienced it and it's wonderful.
Good evening. Good evening. This is a very privilege for me to be here for sharing my story with you. I used to tell people that for me to share my story, it's not means that I have a powerful story than the Rwandans who survived the genocide. The reason why I have been sharing my story for how I survived the genocide, it's because this story and life experience became my calling for bringing hope around the world and telling people for how forgiveness is possible, reconciliation is possible, hope is possible, and restoration is possible. That is one of the message I have today for the world. I was born from a big family which was over 150 family members from both sides. My mom's side and my father's side. And most of them, they were killed during the 1994 genocide. And after the genocide, our life became difficult, especially to the genocide survivors, because of losing everything during the 1994 genocide. Because of this reason, when the killers was killing our people, they was even destroying our property, like destroying our homes. My family's business was keeping cows, like farming, doing agriculture. My father's business was for growing coffee and selling coffee beans. But during the genocide, we lose almost everything. After the genocide, during the genocide, I survived the genocide by climbing the cypress tree, where I spent 15 days without food or water with my 3 uncles. One of my uncle, he was married. He had 5 children and his wife. But when I was with him, in the cypress tree, he lost his all 5 children and wife, and he survived alone from his own family. And he became traumatized because of the genocide. When we were in the cypress tree for hiding, I lost almost all my family members, which included my parents, my grandparents, from both sides, my uncles, aunties, cousins, and all family members. And that is what happened to the most of Tutsi families. Most of the Tutsi families lost their relatives, their parents, their children, their family members. When you get in my country, you can learn a lot. After the 1994 genocide, where you can meet even some single people that lose everyone from their own family. And sometime later, I decided to have vacation training for learning how to fix a car, and this experience was saved my life and my siblings who survived the genocide by trying to find a job for fixing a car as my first job after the genocide. Sometime later, I tried to have tests for driving, and later I get driving license, and driving became my second job. But from 1994 to 1998, I was a hopeless person. My life was very dark because of trauma, together with so much responsibility. As I was taking care of my siblings who survived the genocide, like their own parents, when I was still young, because I was 16 years old during the 1994 genocide. But in 1998, that is when my life was completely changed. I like how Dr. Randy was introduced to this event by reading some more scripture from the Bible. Because one of the big things that was changed in my life was the gospel after the 1994 genocide, in 1998. What happened in 1998, after 4 years being traumatized, living with no hope, I was walking in the street from my hometown, which is Rwamagana. I am glad to have some people from Rwamagana in this event. And then when I was walking the street from my hometown, I heard the voice of singers where they was singing from the small church. And this small church was planted after the 1994 genocide by the Rwandans who left the country during the 1950s and the 1970s during the first and the second massacres, because the 1994 genocide was not the first genocide in my country. When Cain was killed his brother Abel, God was asking him where was his brother Abel. And his response was to reply to God that he is not his brother's keeper. During the genocide, our brothers was our brother's killer instead of being our brother's keeper. Today, when you see what is happening around the world, more division happening, more hate happening. I have been traveling around the world in different countries for sharing this message. Because every genocide begins with hate and division. Sometimes division can happen or come from your neighbors, the same as happened in my country. Our killers was our neighbors. Something still in my mind that I still remember as something fresh in my mind is for how, when the genocide began from our home village and towns, the first killers who attacked our family was the same age, like the young people who I used to go to the school with, even the same young boys who I was playing with the soccer game when I was young. 4 years later, my life was changed. The way of how my life was changed by God. When I was working in my hometown in 1998 December, when I heard the voice of singers where they was singing the beautiful songs, which was made me to be interested to visit them, when I went there, I spent time with them the whole evening, but I was not interested to be involved in the church because of this reason. Some of my relatives, the same as many Tutsi people, they were killed even in the church buildings. I was interested with their prayers and their purpose of prayers for praying the orphans and the widows and the hopeless people, as I was one of the hopeless people in my country after the genocide. And the same night I had dreams. In my dreams, God told me that, Eric, You have to go back to this church because that is where your heart will be healed. And I decided to go to this church at the evening. When I went to this church, the same singers was singing, the same pastor was preaching, but when this pastor was preaching, he was preaching about the hopeless person. When he was preaching about the hopeless person, I was feeling like he was preaching just about me. And then, when he was preaching about the hopeless person, I was looking around if there was anyone who told him about my life and my life experience, but there was no one. Because I didn't say anything about my story after the genocide. And then after he finished to preach, he tried to ask his church members to stand up for praying the hopeless people, orphans and the widows, because the 1994 genocide left thousands and thousands of orphans. After they finished to pray, he tried to ask who want to receive Jesus, and I was the first one. I was crying, my eyes was made tears because of how his message was impacted my heart. After he finished to pray for me, I went in my seat, and then I sat, and then later, after the church service, I decided to stop to go to the church again because I was not interested to be involved in the church. On the following night, I had dreams again. And God spoke to me that, Eric, you have to go back to this church because this is where your heart will be healed and this is where your life will be changed. And I decided to go to the church again. When I went to the church, I was asking many questions myself by the time. Some questions I was asking was for asking myself if God is really exist. The second question was for asking myself about what was going to be my future after I became a Christian born again. The other question I was for asking if God is really exists, what he thinks about the orphans and the widows in my country, because the genocide left thousands and thousands of orphans and widows. And I decided to have 1 week of prayers, fasting and praying. I was feeling like God can only listen to fasting and praying, but God, he can listen anyone, any prayers, especially the prayers from your heart. I started to pray. And when I was praying, I was still crying. And my memory was bring all the pictures from the genocide for how I was hiding the cypress tree with my 3 uncles. And later, when I was crying, I heard a voice. And through this voice, God spoke to me and told me that, Eric, this is your last tears as an orphan. You will never cry the pain, tears like this. And God told me that, Eric, you are asking if I am really exist. I am really exist. I was in Rwanda before genocide. I was in Rwanda during the genocide. I was in Rwanda after the genocide, even today. But the problem and the reason why the genocide happened, it's because my people don't listen to me. When I spoke to my people before the genocide, when they was organizing the genocide, they couldn't listen to me. That is why you have to listen to me. That is why you have to forgive them. That is why you have to forgive your enemies. And I began to struggle for forgive my enemies. And later when I was struggling to forgive my enemies, I was asking myself who I needed to forgive, why I needed to forgive. I was giving some reasons myself, like telling myself that I don't need to forgive my enemies because I didn't know who killed my family because of this reason. I was hiding when my family was killed. I know my family was killed. I know they was killed by the militia, but I didn't know who killed my family. And God told me that, Eric, forgive your enemies even if it doesn't make sense. And later God told me that, Eric, your second question, you're asking yourself how your life will look like in your future. And God told me that, Eric, your life will be bright, your life experience will impact the world. And when I was hearing this kind of a voice, which was a very strong voice, it sounds like storm or strong rain. I didn't know how it was going to happen. I was even asking myself how this was going to happen, because I was giving some reasons like how this kind of hopeless young person can impact the world. But now I am here with you. I am traveling the world. When I was in my church, working full time, sometime later we received some visitors from Wisconsin. And these visitors from Wisconsin, one person who had dreams about Rwanda and Africa, where God spoke to her that, Eric, Joe, you have to feed these 1,000 and 1,000 people. And this lady from Wisconsin who had dreams, she was struggling for how to feed those people, because she was giving herself different reasons for how she can't for how she can't feed 1,000 and 1,000 people. And God told her that, feed them with your joy. And later she came in my country in 2005 with her husband and one pastor who is Rwandan American, who left the country during the first genocide in the 1950s. When they spoke in my church, God told me that, Eric, when they finish to speak in your church, go and share your testimony with them. And later I shared my story with them. And later they visited the orphans I was helping in my hometown from Rwanda. I mean from Rwamagana, my hometown. This orphans was around 150 orphans. And then when they was sharing their experience for how they visited Rwanda, later they was asking me what they can help me. And I was asking them to write my book, to help me to write my book. They was shocked by what I was asking them to help me, because they was asking themselves many questions. How this young orphans can ask to write the book when he's homeless, hopeless, and losing everything, at the same time helping different orphans. And later when they came back, they decided to find who can write my book. That's how my book was written. After this book was printed and published, many things was happened. When something happened in your life, anything can inspire you, even small things. When I was writing this book, sometime later I had a vision for how the most Rwandans who needed to teach their children about our past are the ones who are out of the country today. But when God gives vision, He even provides provision. Now, my hope today is that genocide will never happen again in my country because of this reason. Our people was learned a lot. Our people was suffering for a long time by division and hate. Our people was suffering after the genocide, like being the orphans and the widows. Even today, we have many people still suffering by the trauma as the consequence of the genocide. I will say the same as these Jewish people said, I will never silence. Thank you so much. God bless you.